All right, welcome to the next installment, the next episode of Coach's Corner. I am thrilled to have Michael Rutherford on for all of you guys. So, if you didn't hear us chit-chatting earlier, Michael joined the program when it was a health coaching certificate, very early on. You were one of the
We weren't
first,
even a health coaching. It was just the Primal experts back then.
just the
So here's what happened. I was on like the second to last module when you guys made it a health coaching program. And I was this close to being done. And you were like, here's 3 or 4 more modules. I was like, oh man. So it was right at the very end. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And those of you that have been in the course for a while, that have been lucky enough to be grandfathered into all these additions, I know there are people that have a similar story, that they were close to done and all of a sudden there's a couple more chapters. But I mean, I kind of feel like we've grown together, right?
Yeah.
You in this process and the Institute and all that. But I'm just thrilled to catch up with you. I have caught glimpses of what you're up to just through what I see on social media and what I've heard from other coaches within our community that know you well and have jumped into some of the stuff that you're producing. So let's start with just introduce yourself. And I would love for you, similar to what we do on the podcast, because you were on our podcast early on too, just your origin story on kind of where you started, what brought you to health coaching, and sort of how you've evolved.
Yeah. So as Laura said, my name is Michael Rutherford. I think the official date I signed on in it was probably January. It was right around January of either 2015 or 2016. It was right. This has been a while. I can remember the date now. I know my boys were born, so it was after 2014, but they were still quite young.
Because your boys are close to the same age as my girls.
Yeah. Your girls are I think they're like a year older, which is great. She has twin girls. I have twin boys. But yeah, so it was back then. What really brought me to that is, if we go all the way back, because I was dealing with IBS since the time I was like little kid, about the age of our kids. Is I had some of my earliest memories are literally just like dealing with IBS, which is not great to have as like just old childhood memories of like just horrible IBS stories. But that's really how it was, and nothing ever worked. I tried all of the different high fiber, no dairy, this and that, and all the different things, and none of it ever worked. So I just kind of gave up. Before I was even 20, I was like, this is just what my life is. And I always tell people kind of the pinnacle of that was the worst one I remember is I had a 40-minute drive to work and I stopped 3 different times because I had to go to the bathroom. I couldn't even make the drive to work. Like it was just that bad. And it was it was multiple times a week that I would have something going on. For me, it was alternating. It was back and forth between constipation and loose stools, which is really uncomfortable and just not fun. And that's just what it was. I went into, I was always active in sports. I did wrestling and soccer all through school at a super competitive level. Wrestling probably didn't help because I was doing a lot of weight cutting and really unhealthy. I was doing fasting before it was really, known to be a thing, but it's not really something to be doing when you're a high school age going through growth spurts and wrestling. Like last combination of things you want to be doing. So I had lots of injuries because of that. Graduated from school, went into culinary school, went into working restaurants, I started that in high school. So I was working in restaurants for about 14 years. And just on my feet all day long, just exhausted by the time my kids came around. Was just coffee all morning, switching to drinking tons of soda at night because I was working in restaurants. So it was all free. And so it was just like living off of caffeine, taking about 2,000 milligrams a day of ibuprofen. Yeah, which a prescription dose capsule is 800 milligrams. And I was taking 2,000 milligrams a day, just about every day, because my knees and back were so bad from just all of that. So my boys were about 5 or 6 months old, and I was over at my dad's for dinner. And he had set this goal of reading as he approached 50 and just his own health issues. He had RA and his own gut issues and inflammation stuff. He was like, I want to read the 50 newest books on health and wellness and nutrition that are coming out, which at that time, this is about 2015. Mm-hmm. That's when paleo kind of blew up. I think Mark's first book was like 2012, I think was the publisher, something was right around
Yeah, I
there.
mean, 'cause I think that he hit the 10-year anniversary of that last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that was one of them, Grain Brain and Wheat Brain and, or Wheat Belly. And some of them are Cola's books. And some of these just the big ones that really kind of put all of this on the map and really kind of started, growing all of this stuff. And he was blown away. He was like, we've just got it all wrong. And so we were just having a conversation. It's like, hey, like, check this out. And so it's like, this just makes sense. From like, hey, let's eat we should be eating the foods that we've always had access to before we could manufacture things that we could grow and raise or gather and find. Like that just makes logical sense because that's all we had. And so that's what our bodies are accustomed to. And so, because again, I was always interested, at least just being healthy, trying to be, I was like, let's just try this out. And after about 4 to 6 weeks, I had no digestive symptoms at all. Like there was no IBS episodes, anything. And I was like, well, that's weird. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't doing it to try and fix my digestive issues. At this point in my life, I was like, that's just how my body is. Nothing is fixing this. And something as simple as just like dietary changes, and I was enjoying everything, was like, holy crap. And for me, I'm an all or nothing kind of person. So it's like once I'm into something, I'm all in. And so it's, we're on like a 7.5 year journey of being all in at this point and not really see an end in sight on this one. This is a space that is
Just keep
endless, but
digging deeper.
yeah, I started in the Primal, at the Primal Health Expert, became a coach, with the plan. I always knew I was going to go to the NTA. But at that time, the Primal program was cheaper. It was like $1,000 back then. I'm
It
like,
was, and
it
yeah,
was
I mean,
$1 down and 99 a month. I apologize for you guys, but it was a great deal.
well, and you've been grandfathered in
Yeah,
to everything that we've added since
which I
then.
think is just the coolest thing in the world, that you guys have always done that. And just, there's no extra costs, there's no changes, any problems we had, all the new stuff keeps coming along. And that'll be the same for anyone who got it last year or this year, as you guys keep doing that. Which, and you guys, of all the programs I've done, you were the only ones who have truly grown the back, not only the curriculum, but the back end, which is you get as much information when you finish the program as what you got in the program, which is just mind blowing to me. That was one of the coolest things when that came out. I was like, whoa, like we just got double, like this is I still haven't gone through it all.
Yeah.
There's so much there. So I went to the NTA. I started working at a functional medicine clinic for about 6 months here in the area. That was just an incredible experience, working there as a nutritionist. The NTA, for those of you who don't know, is a Nutritional Therapy Association. So it's kind of based off of Weston A. Price, if you're familiar with that, and just kind of this ancestral animal based, similar. It's not, paleo specific or primal specific, but the idea that we should be eating as our ancestors did, that we should be eating food that is whole, nutritious, animal based, properly prepared kind of deal. So really took that program. And since then, I've just been doing a lot of training in different lab interpretation for functional medicines, looking at stool testing, looking at mold and mycotoxins and organic acids and blood chemistry, which is what I've really landed on with blood chemistry, which is I actually, not only do I see one-on-one clients now, but I actually help teach practitioners, and a bunch of health coaches. Have had several Primal health coaches as well now come through the program. So I teach functional blood chemistry.
Awesome. So I want to wind back a little bit. It's because I know what people are going to be asking too is, because at the end of the day, I think what everybody that jumps on these for is to kind of learn the path you took, the journey you took, why you made the choices you made, why you might have, you said you got a job at a functional medicine clinic. And I think a lot of people think that's the ideal job until you're in it. And you realize, okay, so
I was there for 6 months only for a reason.
Okay, yeah. So I would love to touch on this because this comes up a lot. What kind of jobs can I get as a health coach? Yeah. And oh my gosh, Michael, have you, I was on Indeed.com one time with someone who I think ended up enrolling just to see what kind of jobs were out there. There was over 11,000 jobs that said health coach on the descriptor. Now you got to weed through all of that. A lot of it's not going to be relevant to you because it's in Saskatchewan or whatever, and you live in Arizona. Some of them want you to be an RD or a nurse as well. Yeah. Some of them are really just part-time. But inevitably there are some really good opportunities in there. But there's like the upside of being an employee for someone else and coaching somebody else's curriculum and launching your own business, which has its own downsides, but it's benefits. So I would love for you to speak to that because you've had both experiences.
Yeah, and multiple times. I also worked for my dad's. So, out of the functional medicine clinic, I worked for my dad's company, which actually focused on long haul truck drivers. Spent about 2.5 years with that. I only stuck it out that long because it was my family, but there were some disagreements because of just how the business is structured and things like that, and what I wanted to do and what I wanted to bring in. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go back out on my own. I don't work well for other people. But yeah, so there are pros and cons. I'll tell you, the whole time when I got in this, that was my dream, to get into this functional medicine clinic, be a part of this team, doing all these things, like you said, until you're in it and you realize, oh, like I've got to follow this person's stuff, and I disagree with this, or I want to do this, or just all the different things. There are pros and cons to decide that one of the benefits of this work is you can have your own business, which means you get to make all the decisions, which means you get to make all the decisions, right? That we can look at that two different ways, but also, and all of that responsibility is on you. It's nice just getting a paycheck and having, and you don't have to worry about it. You're not worried. Is the next month's expenses coming? Even now, that's still a hard. I'm in my second year of six figures, and it's still a concern of like, yeah, but is this going to continue for a third year or a fourth year? And that's always, as an entrepreneur, always going to be in the back of your mind of, will this continue? Is this the fluke? Can I keep this going? You don't know when that next month is coming. How much you're going to get. So, there's concerns with that too. The nice thing is that there's no limit. Right. I mean, I know people who are doing legitimate 7-figure businesses in this space as with integrity. There are definitely those doing it without integrity, but doing it from a really good place. And they are making multiple 6 figures. And they have been doing it for several years. Some of them are good friends of mine, and it's incredible to see the potential. That's really the big reason I keep coming back to it and why I'll stay here is there is no limit on the potential of what this can be. Now, with that said, is everyone going to do that? No. It's the small percentage, just like in anything else. But that's any career. Right. I know teachers that make tons of money. I don't remember who it was. I listen to a lot of motivational speakers and different things and talks. And I think it's Steve Harvey, but he knows a guy that's he's a millionaire, multimillionaire, detailing cars. He has a business detailing cars. That's all he does. And he's a multimillionaire because he grew it from just him into like this huge thing. And that's the reality. You could never be a multimillionaire as a car detailer working for someone else. Like, that's not going to happen. Doing it yourself, it's the same skills, right? You just have to start to learn the business. And nowadays that's everywhere.
Yeah. So do you still consider yourself a health coach doing what you're doing now, or do you see yourself as in a little bit of a different role? And how did you feel about coaching, like individuals versus kind of speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So I figured out relatively quickly, I don't like coaching because like the actual coaching aspect, because I am one of those people where I'm like, give me the plan and let me go. And I like, you tell me what to do, I'm going to go do it. And that's cool. It's all I need. And so like, I get frustrated when other people aren't that way. I'm like, but I told you what to do, just go do it. Right. And I get the psychology of coaching. I understand. I even know the tools of it and I just don't enjoy it. So again, if I'm going to do my own business and I get all the own choices, I did it for a while. I did it for, I was still implementing coaching into my programs up until probably about 2 years ago. So still for about the first 4 or 5 years, I was still implementing coaching calls into my packages. So I do a lot of nutritional therapy and more assessments and things like that, making actual directions of what and the changes of what's going on. But kind of in between those is we were still meeting like every week or every 2 weeks to just kind of cover those coaching basics. So now I've niched into a group that doesn't require that. They are go-getters. Since the first thing before you even get to my discovery call, you watch a video that it's like, hey, like this is who my clientele is and this is who isn't. If you are in the group that isn't, I would still love to help you. I can connect you with someone that will help coach you along and connect you with someone. But like if you need that additional support, like I am not that person. And I am a-okay with you not paying me because no one is going to be happy. You're going to bombard my email and I'm going to be incredibly frustrated about it. And it's not going to work for either of us.
So I find it fascinating that, not fascinating, I find it actually really empowering that people, I mean, that every single interview I've done in this particular webinar series, every single one of you has come from a different place, had a different background, has a different type of business, a different niche. You're doing things different types of business models. And so what I find really refreshing about this is you're like, hey, I think I want to be a health coach. That sounds awesome. And walked into that and struggled for the first few years, like many of us do. And part of that may be just finding your way. Like, is this really the track I want? Because I thought I wanted a job and realized I'm not really a good employee. I don't want to work for somebody else, but gosh, starting this business is really hard. And, I'm a health coach, so I better coach people, and realizing that might not be my zone of genius. I don't know if I have the personality for that. And just have really kind of refined down your niche. And we heard a few people, Bill Sias said this, and so did Marisa Moon, that their niche found them. Like they sort of got better and more refined in their process and found more success as they went, as they discovered more about themselves, discovered more about what they really enjoyed doing and what their skill set was like. And here's the thing, where there's a need in the marketplace that people are willing to pay you money.
Yeah.
And they double down on that. Right.
Yep.
So you found this niche in the marketplace where people were willing to give you money, but you found the education that you needed. You went out there and tried it, applied it, and figured out where to fill the gap. So we have a few people in this program that have taken both our course and the NTA program because the philosophies are so similar.
They are.
And what we teach is different from what they teach.
Yep.
The philosophies are the same, but we're a coaching program. They're not a coaching program.
No. And that's the biggest complaint coming out of there is people don't know. They're like, okay, I told my clients what to do, but they didn't do it. How do I get them to do it? And like, there was just a post today in the group, in that group of like, hey, what are your best tools for like recommendations for learning how to coach? This is the biggest complaint they get out of there is they get so frustrated because their clients don't implement the changes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's what's the ... And this is what I hear from nurses that I talk to, doctors that I talk to that are just, that's the skills that they need. Like they understand biochemistry, what they need is to learn how to actually coach and have a different type of conversation. But what I'm hearing you say is, while you value, I'm sure, that education, you've learned that's not what I enjoy doing. I enjoy the other stuff, the information. I enjoy this type of client. And your education here and at NTA, and I'm sure just your own independent research and other programs that you've taken along the way have led you to where you need to go. So here's something I want you to touch on. Trust me when I tell you I value education. Like you, I've taken many courses. I've got a lot of certification, but I only took one before I got started.
Yep.
I added my second one later, once I realized I'd like to learn more about this. I took my next one later when I realized, you know what, I understand CrossFit, but I don't really know what this muscle is. Maybe I should get a certified person, that kind of thing. So I'm a huge fan of education, but what I'm against is people just buying yet another cert or program before they ever even get out and know what the heck it is they need to learn. Yep. So, and I know you feel strongly about that too. So would you speak to that a little bit, please?
Yes, that's an excellent point. And it's a favorite of mine too, because I've had someone come to me because I'll at this point, I've done some business mentoring for some people as well. And I had this woman come to me. She was about $15,000 in worth of just random programs, the NTA and this program and this testing and that. And she hadn't seen a single client.
Yeah.
She hadn't taken in a single dollar. And her question was, should I go back to school to be an RD so that people will take me seriously? And I was just like, what people you haven't worked with anyone, you don't know people's opinions, because she hasn't even tried. It's not that she's been trying it, really trying. She maybe talked a few times on a Facebook post, but nothing really of putting effort in. And I'm like, you don't need any, but you have plenty of knowledge and plenty of tools. That's not the problem. It is, we're covering up our insecurities and our thoughts with that. Oh, we just need this. We just need that. There's a really good, she's probably on 4 years of being 6-figure. She's a fantastic practitioner. She's an NTP, and she's been moving into business coaching this year. And one of the things that she talks about is like, you don't have to know everything, because the average person knows nothing. And all you have to do is be one step ahead of them. If you are one step ahead of them, you can help them. Right. And that's that can be in anything you teach. It doesn't have to be health. Like, just if you want to create a course, for example, like if you just know a little bit more than the average person, you can help someone. So you don't have to have all those things. And for me, that's how I was like, I went through, the PHCI program, and I started seeing clients. I don't even know if I was done. And I had a couple clients. Like, just started taking people. I can't even believe what I charged back then, but I did. And I was starting to be, and when I went through the NTA, like I was seeing health coaching clients as I was going through the NTA. And as soon as I came out of the NTA, I remember it was like I had my finals, and 2 weeks later, I was in the functional medicine clinic, like working with clients and seeing them. I had no additional training. I had those 2 programs. And that was where I got introduced to all of these different functional labs and got really curious, and was just kind of being mentored by the doctor I was with and a clinical nutritionist who was there as well. And was like, wow, this is really cool. But I was using the NTA stuff for another year before I officially learned any testing. And then I learned blood chemistry first. And I did that for probably 2 years before I took any other course. And now at this point, it's spiraled, because now it's pretty quick. I take like 2 or 3 a year. But a lot of it's not necessarily completely new things. It is just, another blood chemistry course, or another stool testing course, or another mold and mycotoxin test, just to get different viewpoints and see. And I might pay $1,000 to get the 20% out of this course that's different, so that I can round that out. But I completely agree. Like, I always tell people, don't go to the next one until you've started to master the first one. Like, get really good and comfortable at that tool, then collect a new tool, because otherwise you're going to have a lot of tools you're not very good at. And that's not helping anyone. You're going to help far more people if you know how to use a hammer really, really well, and just have a hammer, versus if you have a whole toolkit that you really don't know how to use, because you've been taught how to use it, but you've never applied it.
Exactly. And look, we see this happen a lot of times. This is, I think, where a lot of imposter syndrome comes from, is because people, I think, try to move forward trying to feel as though they need to appeal to everybody, or they need to be able to accomplish all things. There's just no possible way. Versus if you focus on the one thing and just drill down on that, you will learn something new with each client you bring on. Embrace that as a learning opportunity and be grateful for it, instead of letting it, I guess, knock down your confidence and be like, oh, I don't know the answer. I'm honest with my clients when I don't know the answer about something.
Please be honest. Yes. And you will be amazed at the gratitude of response that you get when you are.
Absolutely. It's, you know what, that's a really great question. And I want to actually give you kudos, because I've been doing this a long time and it's the first time someone's asked me that question, right? And it's, I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but I know who will. So is it okay that I just get into that? I don't want to just make something up. Sometimes I will say, look, my educated guess would be, but there are a lot of other nuanced aspects to this conversation. So let me get back to you. And it's completely okay. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't know how many doctors I saw when I was sick that didn't know what the hell was wrong.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, right? So these are MDs, guys, that still don't know. And the people I always trust the most, particularly PhDs, I always know someone knows what they're talking about when they qualify every answer with, well, that depends. Or, the people that I trust the most are never the black and white and assume that they know everything. They
especially when it comes to science and health and all of that.
Yes.
There is no black and white.
No, we interviewed Chris Masterjohn, PhD in nutrition, on our podcast. And boy, did that go down a rat. And I could not pin that guy down to give me like an answer to something. It was so frustrating, but that's who he is. And it's because he's a scientist and because he knows there's no simple answer and that's okay.
It is. It depends on this and this and this and this. And well, then there's this. And he's tough to listen to. I love listening to him because I love the science and the brains, but it like you've got to know a little bit of your stuff. Because I remember listening to his podcast early on, and I was like, that might as well have been in Latin.
Look, if you're a new health coach starting out, unless you have a very detailed background in understanding the nuances of autoimmune conditions and I don't know if I'd go down that rabbit hole with somebody until you've done some education, but focus on what it is you know best. And for me, I knew how to lower chronic inflammation and reduce stress, and how to lose what I call the easy way. I had no interest in getting into really, really lean and really, but other people are into that and they know it well because they've done their own research and all that's great. So I want to dig into a little bit because Bonnie had asked, what is NTA? And I typed out to her the Nutritional Therapy Association. So if you don't mind explaining a little bit about what they do, but I also want this qualified because you live in a state where you can use a lot of what you learned there.
Yep.
And about half the states in the US, you have to use that knowledge differently.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
And there's, I always forget the actual website because they've changed it now for a different, there are a couple different kind of advocacy groups out there that will show you a map of the red, green, and yellow and kind of orange sometimes states out there, essentially kind of giving you and summarizing the rules and regulations and laws around what you can and can't do. So I, for example, live in a green state where as long as I am not straight up diagnosing, treating, or curing things, I can more or less do what I want to some degree. There's obviously some limitation to that, but I'm pretty open to who I can help and all of those things. If you're in a red state, which you used to be in, I'm sure one of the many reasons to move.
We'll talk about that in a minute, but go ahead.
Yeah, you've got, being in a red state, you're quite restricted as to, what that can really be. Nevada, I don't remember, Bonnie. I'm not exactly sure which one Nevada is. I don't have a lot of friends that are down there.
No, but if you go to holisticcouncil.org,
they've got a map too.
I'm on the board of that organization. They have a little state map and you can click on Nevada and you can take a look at the actual state law. And Jonathan kind of summarizes it for you in a paragraph.
Yep.
Anyway, so
that really helps. And they'll link usually directly to the state law as well. So you can really read that and see. A lot of times, like green states, I can't say that I'm licensed. I can't say that I'm a dietitian. There's certain terms and words that I can't use to call myself, and then I can't do certain things. But as long as I do that, then I'm pretty open to what I'm able to do, which definitely, like you said, does give me some more wiggle room as to be able to do that. I know many people who have moved because of that. Because it really can kind of restrict. Florida, thankfully, has changed within just the last, I think it was 2019, I think.
Yeah, it was right before I moved down here.
Yeah, so it made a huge difference.
When Michael's referring to red and green states, he's referring to the restrictiveness of the licensure laws on the books. Now, there is no licensure law for health coaching. Health coaches are not licensed. There is no law that restricts us. What there is there's licensure laws on the books that pertain to licensed professions that sometimes have exclusionary language written into that law saying only people that hold this license can do these things. And sometimes there'll be exceptions to that make it what they call kind of like a yellow state, meaning there's laws there, but there are some exceptions that people can work around. And I lived in Illinois, which at the time was considered a red state. Like I was not allowed to give, it just broadly said nutrition advice. Okay. Yep. But in Illinois, there is a free speech law. So you know what I did? I gave a lot of seminars. I was allowed to get up and speak publicly and give my opinion about this stuff and draw people to resources, things like that. I was also allowed to put together just a general e-course. So all of my quote unquote nutrition information was a part of a general nutrition course that people like, it was a lifestyle course that happened to have nutrition in it, but it was generally speaking. And then, so I could never be sort of accused of giving individualized nutrition advice when I did it that way. And I backed myself up. And so here's the thing: when a client would ask me, because I got this at the gym a lot, can you give me macros? Can you put me on a meal plan? Because I owned a gym for a long time, and that's what people wanted. I'd be like, nope. Sorry, legally, I'm not allowed to. And here's why I'm legally not allowed to. But honestly, I don't want to. And here's why I don't want to. That at the end of the day, the only nutritional approach that's going to be successful to you is one that you can figure out how to navigate under any circumstance, whether you're at home following a meal plan, out to dinner, at a party, on vacation. You need to be able to apply. So I said, what we're going to work on is principles. And I want you to learn to embody these principles when you walk into any situation. And that's going to be what moves. So that law almost freed me up from having to put together a stinking meal plan, because boy, what a pain in the ass that is, right? Now here in Florida, as long as I'm not working clinically, I can give someone nutrition advice. If it's general wellness and weight loss, and I have no problem marketing myself that way. And then if I find, and I'm sure there's certain aspects to what you do, if there's something wrong, like if I fundamentally feel there's something wrong, I don't run lab tests, but I'll have you speak to that in a minute. But if based on what the person's telling me, I'm like, I think this person has SIBO, just based on the symptoms. I know enough just through my own research. I'm going to refer that person out to a practitioner that I know can help them. And so that's kind of the way I do it. But you live in a different state. You live in a state that allows you to do more than me. And so you are able to, now I would imagine a lot of these tests are direct to consumer tests, like even consumers can order this. So let's speak to kind of how all that works.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I posted the map, the link to that has the map that you can kind of see, and it describes the yellow, what the yellow means, what the red means, what the green means, and you can see what states. So you can break that down. But yeah, so it's interesting because, let's say we're in a green state. Again, I can order the labs, I can look at them. I still can't diagnose. This is incredibly frustrating because I have clients who come from, they've seen their doctor and their doctor, and I've tried to work with them and their doctor doesn't want to. And it's like, it shouldn't be borderline malpractice. It should be outright malpractice. Some of the things that I've seen ignored, and just not caring to do and to look into more. Because essentially this person, like his previous diagnosis of type 2 diabetes was incorrect. It was a different form that's either type 1.5, which is a different form of type 1 where the autoimmune progress is slow, or it's a genetic issue where his pancreas just doesn't produce enough insulin. There's nothing he ever did wrong. It was just a genetic problem, but he wasn't type 2. And so he was improperly diagnosed because they don't check the right markers. They only check the glucose and A1C, which you can't differentiate these. You have to check the insulin. And so when I brought this up and I was like, I basically gave him a letter to bring to his doctor and was like, hey, like we would just really be, looking to get a full complete diagnosis, and even like laid out the markers that we can run and the tests that we can do. And his doctor said, not interested. Here's insulin. See you later. Didn't want to actually get a proper diagnosis, which is just really sad because there are medications that, depending on what he had, that would improve his situation. He will need insulin, but there are some other things that are on top of it. And his doctor just had no care. Yet if I have someone who comes to me with a very obvious, like type 2 diet, it even says when you order blood labs, it will give you the range for the A1C, that it's 5.7 to 6.4 is pre-diabetes and 6.5% and above on an HbA1c is type 2 diabetes. But if someone came in with an A1C of 8, I still can't diagnose them and say, hey, you have type 2 diabetes if they've never been told that before. Obviously, if they've been told that before, we can have that conversation. They've already been giving that. Same thing with a thyroid panel. They come through with antibodies for Hashimoto's off the charts and their thyroid numbers look a mess. I still can't tell them, hey, you have Hashimoto's. And so I teach this to my students all the time. How do we stay within our scope of practice? And it's a lot of laws, a lot of language, and it's a lot of how you speak and what you say, not necessarily the specific information you're giving, but how it's delivered. And so it's like, hey, these are just patterns that are often seen in those who do have Hashimoto's, who do have this problem, that this is a pattern commonly seen in those issues. You haven't diagnosed them. You say, hey, there's a concern. And definitely for sure, when we see those, if they're not seeing a doctor, 100%. If there is a diagnosable thing within the labs that we see, like, yeah, like you need to go see a doctor and take these in. Like, hey, like, let's just have that conversation. Whether they decide to do anything about it, you need to, you should have someone medically supervising that situation for sure. Yeah, the labs it's such a cool thing. Me personally, politically, I'm incredibly libertarian. So I love the fact that we have access to these labs, that we can do it, that we can get them ourselves, usually at a far higher price than what a practitioner can get. So like I have direct accounts that I can order these and get them done. So there's a lot of these labs will mark it up like 100, anywhere from 50 to 100%.
Yeah.
So, which I get, it's their business model, but it's like they're already expensive. They just became really expensive. But yeah, we can get this access. And so we order these labs, we can see them. Most of the like functional things, so like stool testing that we use, or we use urine tests for different things. They're not, and they'll tell you, like even the test itself will tell you this is not a diagnostic test. These are not used to diagnose, treat, or cure any diseases. Even if it's run by an MD, that's not what they're used for. They are functional tests. The way I always explain it is we don't go to bed tonight completely healthy, right? And wake up tomorrow with full-blown type 2 diabetes. Chronic disease happens it's chronic. It happens on a progression. So it's over the course of time. And so that's where so much of my work and a lot of functional medicine work is are those people who go to their doctor and their doctor says everything is fine, nothing's wrong with your labs. And it's because they're not in a full-blown disease, which is awesome, because the more progressed it is, the harder it is to reverse. So much of our society exists in this subclinical state where they're definitely not healthy. One of my favorite quotes is that health isn't the absence of disease.
Right.
Like there is disease, there's absence of disease, and then there's actually being healthy, right? Most people in this country exist within a spectrum of just merely the absence of disease. They're not healthy and they don't feel well, but they're not unhealthy enough to get diagnosed with anything. So the doctor doesn't know how to help them. And we could argue even when they are diagnosable, they still don't really know how to help them. That's a different conversation.
Yeah. I mean, we interviewed Danielle, what the heck is her name? Thyroid. She's a PhD. She's like a doctor of some sort of biology, but she's built her entire business on TikTok, interestingly enough. But her niche is around Hashimoto's. And she's a prime example of someone who for years was told everything's normal. And she's like, I'm not normal. I can't peel myself off the bathroom floor. This is not normal. And I hear this all the time from people that are interested in health coaching because they've been told the exact same thing. They've been either misdiagnosed, not diagnosed, overprescribed. So the example that you just shared about that one client doesn't surprise me at all. It's rampant. And here's the thing. I'm convinced most of these doctors, all of these doctors, they didn't go into medicine for this.
No.
They went into medicine to help people. The problem is in many cases, a big chunk of their education is funded by pharmaceutical, and they're taught how to prescribe. That's their right. And look, there's a role for that person, I guess. So, in terms of kind of what you're doing now, so you're still working with individuals. You're just not coaching. You're doing, here's what the labs say, and here's a path. And then you're also have written a course for health coaches that want to learn more about that, right?
Yeah. So I currently teach blood chemistry from a functional standpoint. I actually have two different courses. One of them is a deep dive into physiology and the understanding, and we look at almost 80 different markers in that one. It's a 12-week long live course, so it happens about 3 times a year. So I'm in the middle of one right now. Next one won't be until early 2023. But I also have kind of like a 101 entry into blood chemistry course, which is evergreen. You can do it anytime, far cheaper. And because again, it's simpler. It's only about 7.5 hours worth of content versus about 40 hours. So a huge difference in just the depth and how much is covered. Still a fantastic tool. It's really kind of the markers that I started with, probably 4 or 5 years ago when I first started blood chemistry. And it got me a long way. And it's where most of what my work is doing when I'm creating protocols and addressing the root issue is based off of. are those core markers. A lot of the other markers I run because clients want them. I have come to find out that I don't need to run thyroid markers. I know that's a huge one that everyone talks about. We have to have the comprehensive full thyroid panel. Unless you're prescribing medications for thyroid hormone, you don't. It doesn't really help the problem. So for physicians who are prescribing, yeah, it can be helpful for them to prescribe, which still doesn't really fix the issue. It can help symptom relief in the meantime for some people. There's a really interesting study. It's like 30 to 40% of people, when they stop their thyroid medication, feel no difference. They don't feel a difference whether they're on it or not. And there's a lot of reason why, which is something we talk about in my course, because there's such a huge misunderstanding, even in the alternative space, when it comes to thyroid and how to address it. Largely because of one very large group that's been around for a while, and a lot of the misinformation they've been spreading in the alternative space. I won't say names because I don't like to actually bash individuals, but I get that I get that they're doing it out of good intention. It's not correct information, and they just happen to be one of the bigger voices, and so it happens.
I think if folks are living in a state that's red or yellow or what have you, I don't think there's anything wrong with educating yourself. Because one thing, one of the reasons I did not enroll in the NTA program is because I'm like, I can't use it. I can't. In Illinois, I could not use it. Arguably here, it would be touchy too, here in Florida.
So Florida, if I understand Florida correctly, you can still work on those more advanced cases. The qualifier is that if they have been, so if they're working with a doctor and their doctor prescribes for them to work with an RD or like a dietitian, then an unlicensed person cannot work, which is really frustrating because it takes away the personal choice. That's every state. Right. Don't get me started on that one. It takes away our personal choice to who we want to work with. Right. But I think if they let's say they have type 2 diabetes, but their doctor didn't prescribe because for whatever reason, they never said like, hey, go work with an RD, that you could. Or that, something like SIBO that most doctors aren't even going to diagnose anyways. They'll just tell you have IBS. Yeah. Probably not going to tell you to work with anyone. You totally could work with that case if it's something you can do. I always recommend to not work outside your ability. Yeah.
At the end of the day, I think what I love, and maybe this is my background as a teacher, is I love watching my clients take something and run with it. Mm-hmm. We have a coaching conversation and something I said finally sticks.
Clicks. And
I'm like, okay, what are we going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? What's the goal of this? Like, that lights me up far more than some of this other stuff. But I do feel, at this stage of the game in my career, I'm always learning, we are coming out with our own functional therapeutic diets course. This is being written by an RD. She's a graduate of our course. And for folks that just want to have a broader understanding of different ways you can slice and dice a nutritional protocol based on someone's, so for example, it's going to be, here's the umbrella of all these ancestral, the ancestral diet. What's the difference between paleo, primal, keto, carnivore? Who do those serve? What about a special carbohydrate diet? What about the autoimmune protocol? What about a basic elimination diet, more specialty elimination diets, the Weston A. Price approach that, it's just going to kind of break down the nuances of these things and how they're different, and how the different, like the beauty is in the differences on who that might serve a little bit better. So if that's kind of more in your wheelhouse and just trying to help people understand that kind of thing, that'll be there. One thing that might dovetail nicely into your blood chemistry course is we have a human intestinal gut microbiome course coming out. Dr. William Davis is writing that for us.
Super awesome.
Yeah. Talk about an encyclopedic knowledge of bacteria. What? Yeah. He can rattle these things off. It's unbelievable. But understanding that, and if where you live and what you geek out on is kind of what Michael likes to geek out on, and you want to really understand this stuff at a deep level, there'll be things that you can do here. You can take Michael's course, and there's lots of other courses out there. I think what I want to encourage people to do is have a reason to take it and know what you're going to do with it. And don't not start before
this is the biggest thing. Direction. Yep. I am not in Arizona. I am in a very different state.
Yes, a very different state.
I live in Washington State, which is about as different climate-wise as you can get.
Right, but Washington is a very liberal state in terms of the regulations there. California is very similar. Texas is very similar. Trying to think of, so I mean, I think
most are green now. So I'll list the red states. We have Nebraska, South Dakota, Montana, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, Ohio, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia are the red ones. Delaware, Maryland, Florida, and Illinois are the yellow ones. Everyone else is green. And those are always changing. I mean, we have, we have some advocacy groups. There's about 8 states that have changed in the last like 5 years or so. They've been really going out and making some really awesome changes.
Jonathan Posey at the Holistic Council has been integral at this. This guy has made not a dime, and he's not a coach or a nutritionist, like nothing, but he's passionate about this. And he's been integral in changing Florida, certainly, as well as North Carolina changed. So there's a lot to be aware of. And so I just think the more educated we can be in a targeted perspective, once it becomes clear on what it is you want to be able to do and what it is you need to learn to be able to do it, that's kind of what's ideal. So before I let you go, do you mind telling people a little bit about how your business is structured? How do you bring clients on? Are there systems that you use? What are you using to deliver your programs and your courses and stuff? Yeah. And what do you charge? And people want to know that kind of stuff all the time. Like, what do I charge?
I don't charge enough. I've had a couple of practitioners because just to kind of touch on who my clientele is, most of my clients are actually other practitioners and coaches. My niche and talk about a niche that just kind of came to me. It was never on purpose. I never targeted. This ended up becoming my clientele because I was so active in the Primal Health Coach group. I'm not very much anymore. That one just doesn't show up on my radar as much. The NTA, I've been super active from a bit more balanced in male to female. The NTA is not. It is like 30-1 female to male. So I stick out like a big, huge sore thumb in there, where I'm like one of probably 5 active males in there. So I really stick out. And so it's just simply by giving advice and help and aid in there, whether it was with an individual, with their client or whatever, people just wanted to start working with me. And so I've just that's become my niche, and it ended up kind of growing into those who have done all the things and seen all the practitioners and still don't know the answer. They're still struggling after multiple, even holistic practitioners and things like that. Which is great for me because those people don't require coaching, which has been fantastic because they've been doing this for probably years. They just they've been so sick for so long. They don't need like encouragement or motivation to stick to the changes. They're just like, tell me what to do. I can do it, which is great. Works for both of us. Most of mine come through either Instagram or just being in these Facebook groups. Originally, back when I was still coaching, one of the best places for my business, though, starting out, was the Keto Reset group. Especially when we first formed that, when Mark's book came out, and we formed that group, and I, was quickly super active in there, and ended up on the admin team in there, and just again, never coming in like I am a coach. I never stated my authority, which is something I highly recommend you never ever do. 1, you'll probably get kicked out of groups, but 2, it shows a level of insecurity from how I see it, and it's just coming in. You're not trying to be like, I'm this, so listen to me. You're just giving help. And what will happen is I gave help and I gave help and I gave help. It was the same thing in these different professional groups, and they're coming to me. I never had to approach them. They start coming to me and sending me DMs. Hey, do you see people? Like, what are you? Are you a practitioner? Are you a coach? Like, can I work with you? And that worked really well for me. I got a lot of clients from that group at the time. Instagram is now, it's either Instagram or just word of mouth at this point. I've had this one woman, she's fantastic. She's had both of her kids and her husband now also come to me. She's sending me her parents. She's also sent me 2 of her friends. I'm like, I need more of those clients. It's been great.
But when you just go for it, so here's what I want to just pull out a minute is you just gave information. This comes up I remember in particular in our early days about the
big fear.
What's okay to give away for free. And I'm like, freaking all of it. just share and offer to help. People will come to you, because we all know only 10% of the people are actually going to be able to take what you say and actually be successful long term, right? Everybody else is going to be like, gosh, he clearly knows what he's talking about. When I did try it, it worked really well, but I'm having a hard time doing this on my own. So give freely, because newsflash, none of what I know came out of it's not like I made it up. Right?
No, I learned it from someone else who probably learned it from somewhere else. Like,
no, it's not my information. What people are paying for, some people say it's time, and that's kind of it. I mean, it's our only non-renewable resource, right? So you do have to be compensated for your time, but it's also for their outcome. It's you're compensated for putting it all together in a way that they can actually understand and help them actually be successful for the first time. There are so many other reasons why people pay you than just information.
Yeah, because the information's out there. I mean, you can get an MIT degree. You can get the knowledge of an MIT degree without ever paying a dime. Yeah. It's all out there. A lot of their stuff, they publish it personally. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it is. They're not coming to you just to get the information. No. It's to make it simple, to make it easy, and to have someone accountable, especially in coaching, to have someone accountable. Right.
So did you have someone help you learn how to use Instagram, or did this come to you naturally? Because it does not come to me naturally at all.
Naturally? I hope people think I'm great on Instagram. I don't feel that way. So I will say two things. I am great on video now. Super natural to me. Boy, did it not start that way. Facebook memories love to remind me of that. When I get Facebook memories from when I first started coaching, I am like, that is incredibly painful to watch. At this point, when I was working for my dad's company, I was doing Facebook Lives every week. And I did over 70 of them. And so doing that, I taught 3 different courses. I taught one on digestive health, one on metabolic health, and one on the keto diet. And those were all 8-week courses. And I have taught to about 4,000 or 5,000 people through those courses. So I have probably thousands of hours at this point speaking. So that becomes really easy. So, Instagram stories and reels, it's easy enough for me to get in front of the camera and speak at this point. As far as understanding Instagram, I haven't paid for anything. It's just been a lot of, now there's Instagram coaches everywhere. Instagram coaches are all over Instagram.
Oh my God, I get DM'd all the time. It drives me nuts. Yeah.
Thankfully, I don't get those much anymore. I did for a while. But I do follow a lot of the good accounts. And just, again, their model is giving that information, right? That's what they're giving. And so just following that, just following what's going on, what's happening, trying to apply it as best I can. I surely don't do, the best at it. But I do enough, it works. Yeah. So yeah, that's as far as what I charge. I have 2 different packages. So I have my kind of normal everyone package right now, which is 3 consults. It does include labs with it. So again, my structure being that is a little bit different. Those 3 consults typically are spread out on an average 4 to 5 months. Protocols last on average or so, maybe 8 weeks. And so I'm not necessarily connect. I might check in with them. Hey, just making sure things are going well. If they have negative symptoms, anything negative happens, I want them to reach out. Otherwise, we don't have accountability calls or check-ins or emails. So it's just the 3 consults with some labs, and that's $1,697, which will be going up in the new year. And then I have a bigger package because I've been going through mold illness myself for a while now. And that as I've speak out about your story, by the way, no matter where you're at, speak out about your story. I've probably booked 10, 12-month packages in the last 6 weeks because I started speaking out about my own journey through mold and what I'm doing and those things, and using that as, material to make. So I have a 12-month package that has 8 consults in it, with some labs included, and that one's just under 4,000. And I've had people don't blink an eye at it. We think, oh, it's going to be too much. It's like, I can't charge that. You can. Say it confidently. That's the biggest thing. Practice over and over when you deliver your price. Practice it over and over and over till it just flows right out. There's no stop. There's no pause. And then just wait. The most difficult part, say the price and say nothing You don't speak until they do. That's the biggest one. That is hard. I've had people who legit like we're on Zoom and it's just like 15 minutes of them just thinking about it. And I'm just like, did it freeze? Like, I'm like, are things moving? Like, and then they're like, yeah, I can do that. And you're like, it is so hard. I used to be really bad at like jumping in and be like, but if there's more than like 2 or 3 seconds, I'm like, oh, but we could do this or I could try that. You will lose yourself more money than you ever will. Most people especially if it is over $1,000, most people just need to think about it for a second.
Right. No, absolutely. And look, at the end of the day, because this is a question I get asked, like, who's going to pay me? I'm not a doctor. I'm not an RD. And I'm like, who's going to pay you is people that's already been to the damn doctor. People who have already been to the RD. People have already gone that traditional road and are still unsuccessful.
Yep.
And especially I think when people have been kind of suffering the way they've been suffering, I think in many people's minds, like, okay, so I could sit here and live a miserable life till I die, or I could pay $4,000 and have half a chance of actually being able to resolve this issue and live a normal life.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is where I'll go back to again, one of the questions they always people want more certifications and more things because they want to, again, appear as they know enough or they're good enough. I've never once had any of my clients, someone who was actually willing to pay me in the first place and work with me, and any of the clients have any concern about what certification, what my education was. And one of the reasons goes back to what you said before: give and give and give freely, because when you give those tools, you give that education in your social media, in your newsletters, in your emails, whatever it is, that's where you're building their trust, not in, oh, well, I have this certification or that. Because like you said, they've been to doctors who couldn't help them. So there's nothing above that. We don't have anything above doctors when it comes to that. And so they're not concerned about that anymore. They just want to be able to trust you. And that's what that social media does.
Yeah. So your functional blood chemistry course, is that so is that you have a live class and then you have like an evergreen course?
Yep.
Tell us about when those are launched, what those cost.
So the blood chemistry 101 is anytime, you can sign up whenever. It's $397. There is a coupon code called ACT FAST, all capital letters, no space. So ACTFAST, that will save you $100 off of that. So you do have that. That one you can do anytime. All of my courses are lifetime access, so you never lose anything. I don't update them nearly as much as Primal does, but you do always get access to that. I don't put it in a new area, so you'll always have that. The live course is 3 times a year. It's usually sometime in the early beginning of the year, summertime, and then around like fall, September time. So we are in the middle of one right now for that big live course. That one, the next one will probably be like end of January, February-ish. I'm going to Mexico in the beginning of January.
Ooh.
So yeah, the second honeymoon, we split it into 2 trips. We wanted to take 2 smaller trips because we got to get out of this Northwest weather about January. So
oh yeah, I don't blame you at all. And congratulations, by the way.
Yeah.
Awesome. So thank you so much for just, first of all, always when you are in there piping up and supporting your fellow PhDs. I think I see you mostly in the grads page.
In the grads. Yeah.
Maybe not.
I'm in the students, but I'm not too active.
Yeah. But guys, whether you're a student or a graduate, there are likely people on this call that aren't in either because they haven't enrolled here yet. But for those people listening, Michael is an example of a graduate who used our program to accomplish what he wanted to accomplish over time. Great example. But those of you that are in, if you've got a question for Michael, I'm going to have you give whatever contact information you want to give. But also you can always just, tag him in a post.
Yeah.
You'll be much more likely to see that. Right. If you tag him in there. So I've got a couple of questions here and then I got to let you go because my husband's car broke down. I got to go. So he's sitting at a Dunkin' Donuts drinking coffee at 6:00 at night. So he's not going to sleep. Okay, so let's see. Sounds like you're very well versed in the space. Do you have any knowledge on information on epigenetic coaching?
I don't. I got nothing there.
Yeah, I mean, you learn about epigenetics in the course and kind of the role of epigenetics and understanding how the environment affects that sort of genetic switch that turns things on or off. But I don't go into any particular detail there either. Sorry, everyone loving the conversation, but have to leave. It's 1 a.m. Oh, thanks for joining us, Gisela. It's 1 a.m. there and she's still logged
Get
on.
some sleep.
Yeah, so there will absolutely be a recording. Will a link be emailed for Michael's course?
Yeah, we can put that in there.
We can certainly do that. So what we can do, anybody listening, because people are going to get the replay of this via email. I can, if you want to send me a link, I can ask Jane to stick it in the email, but otherwise hit up Michael. Okay.
Yeah, totally. You can find me.
He'll send you the link to that and that coupon.
You can find me anywhere.
Fundamentalwellness.com is kind of where he's at. So,
and there's no L in there. There is L in the wellness, but it's not supposed to be fundamental wellness.
Oh.
That was already taken. And so fundamenta is one of the Latin derivatives to foundation and fundamental and all of that. So I chose that, but I get asked all the time. And you have to be careful if you do type that in, because it will try to autocorrect it to fundamental, especially if you try and email me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's so funny. I didn't even notice that.
But if you find me, like if you find me on Facebook, shoot me a message and I can get you links and anything like that as well.
Yeah. No, but this is so great. It was so great to catch up with you and kind of just see what you're doing now, and that you have found your spot where you think you have kind of found your little zone of genius through education. And
what about the one thing we didn't talk about is the community you can find in these groups. This has been amazing. I mean, I always joke. So I had separated from my boy's mom probably 5 or 6 years ago. And the only people I've dated ever since have been either from Primal Health Coach Institute or the NTA. It was like my little dating service. So those of you who are single, think about it. Because I wanted someone who was aligned with my approach to just health and wellness in life. And that was where I found them. So there's one that, but two, I also got 2 of my groomsmen out of these groups, out of the Primal Health Coach Institute. So both Steve and Jonathan. We've had some really good friendships of other people as well over the years. Some of my greatest friends are from these groups. So really lean on this community. It can be incredible.
Yeah, man, you get out of it what you put into it, right?
Yeah.
And I think early on when we were smaller, it was easier to find.
It was easier for sure.
Now that we're so much bigger. But one thing I highly recommend, and I saw, I think it was Mike posted something in the students group, or maybe it was the graduates group. It was basically an accountability group. Hey, who wants to join me in a group to hold yourself accountable to get your business growing?
I saw that.
I don't know. There was like 35, 40 people that are like me. So that lean on each other for that. But a group that big, it's very easy to drop off and get lost. I would recommend you put together a small mastermind group, a group of 3 to 5 maximum, where you guys are meeting on a regular basis. There's consequences for not showing up. Hold each other accountable to whatever it was you said you were going to have done by the time your next meeting opened. And honestly, so Erin's going to be launching this Launch Your Coaching Business course in February. I think that's going to be the biggest benefit of that course. It's going to be like this live mentorship. So to be fair, you're going to have Erin and Liana and some people that have done this, been there, done that are mentoring you. And they're going to hold your feet to the fire, and you're going to be given a deadline. And so you can, look, if you can't afford the $18.95 for that course, do it together for free. Get a small group together and hold each other accountable and get in there. Bonnie, I'm an IIN grad, lots of other trainings, haven't launched a coaching business yet. Get out there, girl.
No more trainings. Go do
IIN. It. Just get out there. And follow people. What one might be a good exercise. Maybe I'll drop this in the Facebook group is other PHCs that are out there doing things that have a great either Instagram handle or things they're doing on Facebook or a website they're proud of. Share it in the group so that we can all follow each other.
Yeah.
Now, one thing to bear in mind, if what lights you up isn't what lights Michael up, don't compare yourself to Michael. Right? No. Don't try to necessarily emulate Michael. But if there's things about what he's doing that you really like that you want to emulate, there's nothing wrong with that. Right?
I follow a bunch of practitioners on Instagram so that I can see how they're using trending reels in the health space, because sometimes the trends I see them in another niche. And I'm like, how do I make that about our space? Yeah. So I follow a handful of practitioners who are crushing reels that just do such a good job at it so that I can see their ideas.
Use it as a way to be inspired rather than intimidated.
Yes.
Is my
and if you are intimidated, like unfollow them, mute them, whatever. Because that's not helping.
No, not at all. Awesome. All right. So Oh, any CMEs for the lab course from Elizabeth?
Yeah, so I don't have anything that's like official as far as like, oh, this will be accredited to this. But if there are things that you need, it does give on the full. I don't know if it does it on the 101 course. I'll have to look, but you do get certificates from both of them. And I know on the full course, it does say the amount of hours the course is. I give 30 hours because that's how much the pre-recorded is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that question a lot too about our courses, if it's good for whatever, but the vast majority of many, not all, but many institutions, as long as you
will recognize it,
know what's on that application that you know you need to fill out, we can let you know then if we're going to check the box or what information you need to get it done. So thank you for that. All right, I'm going to go pick up my stranded husband. Fabulous. This has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
it was so great to catch up with you. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We will send out the replay. We'll do our best to try to get that link in there too. But otherwise, just hit up Michael, Fundamenta Wellness.
Yes.
.com.
Perfect.
Find him on Instagram. Awesome. Bye, guys.